Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to yet another online event of the India-New Zealand Business Council. I'm very pleased to start this year with this event where we are discussing about the recent budget which was issued by the government of India. We everyone looks at the budget of a country, whether it's India or New Zealand, with a bated breath, because that gives us an idea of where the wind is blowing and what it really means for the business and economy. So today we have a very distinguished panel to debate and discuss and also give us some pointers on what the budget talks about. We are also joined by representatives from Invest India, from the Indian High Commission, and independent industry names as well. Just a quick structure. So the first 30 minutes, we will have the keynote addresses and also the quick presentation on the budget highlights and some key incentive points. And then the next half an hour, we'll have a panel discussion. I will request everyone to keep their mics on mute except the speakers till that time. And when the panel discussion happens, Earl will be moderating and emceeing on our behalf. Earl is our chair of the India-New Zealand Business Council, and I will be introducing him shortly. So after Earl asks the questions to the panel, we will throw open the forum for discussion. So I'll quickly start with an introduction of Earl, and he will take on from there. Earl Rattray, he has a long-standing dairy industry career, both in farming and as a senior dairy industry in leadership roles. He has been the founding director of the Fonterra Cooperation Group and inaugural chairman of the NZ Dairy Companies Association. Earl is based in Waikato. He's director of several local agri-sector companies and chairs the governing board of Binsar Farms Private Limited, which is a Haryana-based farming and fresh milk marketing company operating in the Delhi NCR region. Earl had previously served as the treasurer of INZBC and is currently the chair of the board. So over to you, Earl. And just for people who are joining from India and who may not know Earl, he is famously known as the Kiwi Indian milkman of New Zealand, because he's the first Kiwi Indian Kiwi person who started his own operations in India, and he's actually an Indian dairy farmer as much as a Kiwi dairy farmer. So over to you, Earl.
Oh, look, Gary, thank you for the introduction. So namaste and tēnā koutou, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the India-New Zealand Business Council. Certainly for all of us who are engaged in New Zealand Indian commerce, keeping abreast of the macro drivers of the Indian economy are not just interesting, they're actually critical to us, understanding those dynamics. And it's not just for us, it's actually for the whole world, that as India continues, it's on its trajectory to becoming the world's fourth largest economy. What happens in India matters. It matters not just here, it matters to all of us. So the budget does become a big driver of the direction and the pace of the developments of India, because it creates the environment that we all operate in. And if we look at all the features that are contained in the budget, which is a very, very wide-ranging budget, certainly from a New Zealand set of eyes, so it covers key elements of productivity, agriculture, skills development, communications, banking, and all the drivers that are going to propel the Indian economy forward into the future. So I am really thrilled, Gary, that you've been able to assemble a group of speakers here today who are not only familiar with India, but are very experienced in their own right in business, to give us their take on these economic developments, these key policy drivers that are occurring in India. So we are going to start today with His Excellency and our good friend, Muktesh, Pardeshi. He is the India's High Commissioner to New Zealand and always provides very good insights. Sudha from Invest India will will address us, as will Himanshu Srivastava, both very, very experienced business people with deep knowledge of both India and the global connections. We'll follow with a panel discussion. We'll include Dhillon, a New Zealand industrialist, and Changlani, chartered accountant in New Zealand, one of our committee members, will join Sudha and Himanshu on a panel where it'll be open for conversation and questions towards the end of this session. So this does provide us, I think, with unique insights to spend an hour getting a fix on what this means for India, what this looks like. And I'm very, very thrilled to be able to just convene and to moderate this meeting. One of the very hard things to do, though, is to keep a very interesting speaker to around 5 minutes of presentation. It's hard for the speaker, and it's even harder for the moderator, but I'm going to do my best. So to start off with, I'm going to ask His Excellency Muktesh Pardeshi if he could begin this forum with his 5-minute overview and take on the budget of India. Over to you, Muktesh.
Namaskar and kia ora. First of all, from the High Commission, I would like to thank INZBC, that's the India-New Zealand Business Council, Invest India, and all distinguished panelists for joining today's online charcha on India's budget 2022. We look forward to benefiting from the exchange of views from business leaders and key officials from both countries. Let me begin by updating you on a key development which took place yesterday. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, met Foreign Minister Nanaya Mahuta in Paris on the sidelines of Indo-Pacific Forum, which is taking place in Paris. This was their third contact, but for the first time, it was a face-to-face meeting. Two earlier occasions were in virtual form. They discussed all bilateral matters, including trade, investment, and economic cooperation bilaterally, and emerging issues in the framework of the Indo-Pacific. Both sides, we look forward to more of two-way trade. We look forward to having more of two-way investments, more of two-way technology partnerships, and more of people-to-people links spread over education, tourism, and skilled migration sectors, which have a huge potential for service industries. I'm very happy that today we are discussing key pointers in the Indian budget for the financial year 2022-2023, which has special implications for trading and investment community in New Zealand and around the world. As there are panelists and participants from India as well, I may mention that last month we have launched a special publication, Exporting to New Zealand, and I will show it to for our viewers. This special publication is a handy guide for exporters from India, and it's available on High Commission's website. This is part of a larger report called Doing Business in New Zealand, which is a special guide being brought out by the High Commission in consultation with Duco Consultancy. This publication should be out in 2 months' time. In India, the presentation of the Union budget is watched keenly. And as Mr. Earl alluded to, as India rises on global economic stage, it is also now watched overseas. Our budget is the annual financial statement presented on the first day of February so that it could be operationalized by 1st April, which is the beginning of the financial year. This year, infrastructure development has emerged as the topmost priority for the government to lay the foundation for economic growth through public investment as the economy recovers in the post-pandemic phase. India has led the world's largest vaccination drive, which is an optimistic sign of economic recovery. India's economic growth is projected at above 9%, which is the highest among all major economies. The outlay for capital expenditure has been stepped up by more than 35%. We are actually laying the ground for next 25 years. There are 4 priorities. The first one is called Gati Shakti, the speed power. There is focus on multimodal connectivity. Then there is focus on productivity enhancement, investment and energy transition. There is focus on inclusive development and huge financing of investment in key sector. I would like to conclude by mentioning agriculture, which is backbone of our country. In a similar fashion, in New Zealand, agriculture is the largest sector of tradable economy. To make this take-led sector grow, we need to work with New Zealand. And we have in Earl a leader from dairy and agriculture sector. We look forward to getting insights from you and Mr. Allett and other key figures in this sector. High Commission and INZBC will be working together on this area, and we have decided to focus on this sector in the coming cycle of business events. Very recently, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has entered into an agreement with G2G, which is a public sector undertaking here in New Zealand, to transform shipping farming sector in Jammu and Kashmir. I'll conclude here, and I wish the deliberations huge success. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Muktesh, and can I say how much we all appreciate your support that you give to the overall framework of India-New Zealand business relations. I didn't mention earlier on, but I'm going to now just let your audience know here that Muktesh is he was named the Ambassador of the Year for his contributions to the Mexican Indian trade relationships. He's got a long and proud history of actually facilitating international or bilateral business. And look, we are very, very grateful to have you on our side in this. And I know that you're going to stay as long as you can through the session. If in the end we can get you to perhaps participate, it'll be good to know if you're online or not. But otherwise, I know you're going to sit through the proceedings and enjoy, I think, the presentations that we're all going to hear. So thank you very much. And I'm going to take now, ask if we could get on screen Sai Sudha. Now, Sai Sudha is going to give us one of her a keynote address. We haven't met previously, but reading her CV, I can see she is absolutely no stranger to in entrepreneurialism and risk. Sudha has very rich experience, ranging from operations through strategy, investments in marketing, in startups to national level organisations. She's worked in the health sector in the past, and she spent a number of years offshore, 7 in Hong Kong, co-founded 3 startups. But she returned back to India in 2019 and joined Invest India, which is the organisation, the government sponsored organisation that facilitates foreign investment, and she heads the FDI investment function under the Make India program, and a cluster for a cluster of countries in the APEC region, including New Zealand. So it's probably no surprise that she's very well educated. Postgrad qualifications from the US, BCom originally from University of Madras, and she spent time at Harvard University as well. So, Sai, it's my pleasure to introduce you of this session hosted by the India-New Zealand Business Council, and we look forward to you giving us your insights and the benefit of your experience and observation on the budget and its deliverables.
Thank you, Earl. Very kind of you. Excellency, thank you very much for the brief insights on the potential between India and New Zealand. Thank you very much. And most importantly, I would like to thank INZBC for putting together this wonderful platform. I believe today's webinar is a really important platform that opens dialogues, that opens channels for discussion, for continued discussions between India and New Zealand. We are just at the tip of the iceberg. The potential that New Zealand and India hold are tremendous. Over the recent years, New Zealand has become the New Zealand's Prime Minister is quite an iconic role model, not just for people in New Zealand, but for a lot of youngsters in India as well. Also, that topped up by one of the Indian origin, people from India has made it to the minister position. Ms. Priyanka Radhakrishnan in New Zealand is also a mark of great celebration in India. This just talks about how much we appreciate the relationship and partnership we have with New Zealand. And like I said, this is only the tip of the iceberg. I want to talk about some of the potential India has in welcoming the New Zealand investors, and what are the opportunities you have in India and the potential for collaboration between both our regions. I want to start by quoting a couple of very interesting facts. At the helm of the pandemic last year, India attracted about $81 billion investments from across the globe, from across sectors and countries. When I say sectors, it came across nearly 60 plus sectors these investments came from, and it went to nearly 30 states, which means it has been equally spread across the length and breadth of the country, which is an indication of the fact all the states are equally competitive. Anywhere you choose in India, each of the states are ensuring they give the best possible experience for the investor who comes to India. This is primarily backed by the number of incentives, reforms, and the special support the state government and the union territories are providing, and the center has been announcing and has announced in the recent budget as well. This huge spike in the FDI came when the global FDI was going down by nearly 35%. India's FDI shot up by 10%. This is again an indication of the trust the world is having in India and how much India is so resilient during the pandemic, how we are able to change and how we are able to change to the growing needs and demands of the investors who are now looking at the new India. Today, we are a population of about $1.4 billion. 1.4 billion people. By 2030, the average age of the working population available in India is about 29 years old. And if I may say so, it's about 10 years younger than the median age of the population, working population in China. India will be contributing to nearly 20% of the global workforce in about 8 years' time. This talks about the rate at which India is growing. I also want to talk about the investments that came across sectors. Not just the investments, we did not see the investment in not just the traditional sectors, but a lot of emerging sectors, data storage, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, so on and so forth, drones, so on and so forth. Nearly about 40% of the investments in the data storage that India has ever received was received just last year. This talks about how we are changing and how we are able to sustain and welcome the investors to India as well. Today, the ease of doing business ranking of India, according to 2019, the last survey report stood at 63. 2 years before that, 3 years before that, we stood at 140. We were able to jump that because of all the reforms backed by the government of India. Reforms such as the corporate tax. It is a milestone reform in the Indian business landscape. The new taxation rate that was announced by the finance minister 1.5 to 2 years ago puts India as one of the most competitive countries with respect to tax, not just in Southeast Asia, but across the globe as well. One of the lowest tax any country has to offer is today in India. The government reforms and measures include the national single window portal, where the investors have to come and log into only one single place, where all the licenses, applications across sectors and states are consolidated into one mega platform, where you do not have to visit 20 different platforms and interact with 30 different stakeholders. One single platform gives you everything. There's something called the Empowered Group of Secretaries, Project Development Cell, where these two very powerful high-level bodies have been constituted to develop the investment pipeline in India and to support and to help resolve any bottlenecks for individual companies or for the industries that are facing. This group is constituted by secretaries of various ministries in the center in New Delhi. I also want to tell you today, we are going towards a $5 trillion economy, and this is not being powered by the tier 1 cities of India. The growth of New Age India is today powered by my tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 cities. Yes, including tier 4 cities. About 50% of the luxury car sales, specifically Mercedes-Benz today, 50% of the sales comes from my tier 2 and tier 3 cities, not from my very urbanized tier 1 cities. 60% of my Amazon sales, e-commerce sales, digital wallet sales, 60% across India comes from my tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 cities. Today, the states are competitive as ever. Just wanted to assure you, today the competition is not between Maharashtra or Gujarat. It is between Maharashtra and Vietnam, between Gujarat and Indonesia. World-class competitive reforms, subsidies, and hand-holding mechanisms government of India has today put in place. Before I wind up, I would like to take 30 seconds to tell you what Invest India is. Invest India is a national investment promotion and facilitation agency set up under the aegis of DPIIT, which functions under the Ministry of Commerce. The sole mandate of Invest India is to handhold the investors and help them, number one, become familiar with the country. India is so large. Every 500 kilometers, the language, food, cuisine, fabric, everything changes in India. But to ease this mystery about India, Invest India acts as a single nodal point of contact for you, where we work with every state government, every department, the center and ministry, and help you navigate India seamlessly. Before the pandemic, the global production and the revenue levels of some of the international brands, the global revenue was dropping, but the revenue of the Indian subsidiary was skyrocketing. The subsidiary was placed across few sectors. They were having production units across few states in India, and everything was working seamlessly. At Invest India, we have a New Zealand desk with 4 members, myself, Vyashika, Vidhi, and Kanika. All the 4 of us are today on this particular webinar. And we are always supported by our Indian High Commission in New Zealand. So if you have any questions or would like to get in touch with us to understand about any state or sectors, it would be a pleasure to help you and handhold you. Since we represent the government, all our services are pro bono. On that note, I'd like to leave by saying we welcome you to make in India, make for India, and make in India to make for the world as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sai. And look, it's great to see you are just warming up there, and we're not going to let you go because we want you on the panel in a little while. So, hey, look, thank you for that that enthusiasm as well. I think your introduction is very helpful in a way of introducing our next speaker, who's Himanshu Srivastava, and he is also got a very rich and fascinating background. He works for Business Advisory Services, ASA, Corporate Catalyst India, and his responsibility, he is involved in consulting and business advisory. His responsibilities do encompass facilitating foreign investment. In other words, smoothing away all the hard stuff that we have to deal with and steps along the way. So he has been involved in supporting setting up factories, sales and marketing offices, and certainly he's also had experience in managing insolvencies, which goes with the territory of risk and entrepreneurialism, corporate liquidations, mergers, acquisitions, and restructuring, all of the features of an investment and growth. Himanshu, he acts as a professional resident director for foreign investors, which I felt was fascinating. And he's also very active in regulatory approvals as well. So during the establishment phase of business. So the two of you are sort of joined at the hip. I'm not sure whether you know each other previously, but this very, very good synergy between you. So Himanshu is also a very active speaker nationally and internationally in various forums. And he's got great technical knowledge in the domains of corporate and industrial law. So all of those things are critically important to investment, international investment in particular. So I'm going to very warmly welcome Himanshu to address us. I know that we've given you 5 minutes, but we'll use that as a loose guideline. So welcome, Himanshu.
Thank you. Just a moment. Yeah. So I hope my screen is visible. So
yes,
thank you.
We can see that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, INZBC. Thank you, Invest India. I would like to thank His Excellency Muktesh Pardeshi, and also Jay Changlani, who is the Treasurer with INZBC. So it's an honor to be amongst you and to be addressing this gathering. So it's our favorite topic during this time of the year. Financial budget 2022-23 is certainly very forward-looking in terms of measurable outcomes. But since we are running short of time, I will quickly run you all through my slides, and then probably we can move on to the panel discussions. I'm mindful of the time, and so just bear with me. So as His Excellency has mentioned, the budget is primarily based on 4 facets. PM Gati Shakti, which is a national master plan. Since the slides are in English, so no problem, and time is of short. So let's not get into too much detail. Second is inclusive development, which is primarily to include all these segments, be it urban or large or small enterprises or neglected and backward regions. So everything should be included in the development phase. Third is productivity enhancement, and sunrise sectors have been identified. And like a true balance sheet, there is definitely a kind of a way out as to how these investments will be financed. If I were to kind of just take you through what are the impact of the budget on key sectors, I have highlighted the key announcement, which in my belief is relevant for this audience. There are certain key sectoral announcements, such as this food processing, which really talks about how these incentives, which the government is keen, and how inclusive measures will be taken to increase the participation of every segment into realizing the full potential of the food processing sector, be it the river linking project or the MSP, or even the rationalization of scheme to increase various agricultural produce. So in terms of the focus, the government has certainly made food processing as a key focus for the coming year. And as His Excellency also mentioned, that we are at a very crucial phase. We are planning for India at 100, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and Amrit Kal as the next 25 years. As by the end of my slide, I hope we have developed a consensus that yes, this budget is really the kind of tone that we need to take right now. In terms of fintech, let's say startups who are in this domain, who are keen on India, startups and investments have been catching up very fast. Very key measures that have been announced. Everybody is aware that how fast India is developing in terms of digital transactions. In fact, without comparing with anybody, I think we are at a juncture or at a spot that we cannot be ignored. And this certainly needs the right kind of channelizing, which the government is consciously been taking the measures. And in this budget also, there were several measures that were announced, be it in terms of introducing digital rupee or digital banking, or be it integration of post offices with the core banking system. Tax on virtual digital assets, it is still debatable, but I think the government has really shown that it is keen to address the challenges and the queries which the industry have. And I think our government is really a firm believer in participative governance and management. So certainly there will be more opening up, more encouragement to the digital assets domain. I think I've already covered, but key thing that I would like to mention here is that government has specifically mentioned that they are going to promote startups to facilitate drone Shakti and drone as a service, DRAS. So other than that, there have been specific incentives for startups, which are extended by 1 more year. And then there are certain tax concessions on transfer of capital assets. There is definitely kind of a blended capital funding, which is going to be provided to startups and to various cooperative societies or private sector. Participation is kind of encouraged in this, specifically in terms of using startup as an enabler to kind of enhance the economic growth. In terms of infrastructure, again, I'll taking cue from His Excellency, National Master Plan PM Gati Shakti. I would just like to stop here and just mention that even though this is a Sanskrit word, or commonly in Hindi we understand, but if you really look at the budget document very carefully, you cannot just read one section and ignore the other three, because it's a complete story. It's a complete story how India has been built in the last, since we liberalized from 1991, in the last 8-10 years, what has changed. So if you carefully not just look at this year's budget, but if you really study the whole story, it all makes sense. So these are the measures that are required. These announcements such as 100 cargo terminals and multimodal hubs is certainly going to change the course of the development and the infrastructure acceleration that will create. Emphasis on tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So I believe that technically this tier 1, tier 2 and 3 is technically in our mind, but if I really go to tier 2 cities, for example, Indore, it's much more clean and much more developed than right now what I feel myself in Delhi. So it's all very conscious realization that we need to kind of take specific measures to bring them in the same platform, in the same page as we really talk about metropolitan cities. So there have been very specific announcements in terms of public capital expenditure or capacity building, both in terms of infrastructure as well as adding to the whole ecosystem for urbanization. In terms of manufacturing, there have been several, I would say the opinion has been very, very positive for manufacturing sector. I do read that the government is keen to bring out a PLI scheme for the 5G ecosystem. Again, realizing the fact that we are largest or fastest developing telecom consumers. The numbers totally are, unbelievable. They're so large to kind of digest for anyone. But then this is all is happening on the ground, and we are experiencing it. More stress on renewable energy, solar power capacities. And of course, there was a PLI also on this. Education, again, a very key aspect. Not one segment was ignored by this important facet of our day-to-day life, education. The government has really gone out and learned the lessons, learnings during the pandemic, and this is now going to drive our educational initiative. One class, one TV channel program, which was restricted to 12, will now be expanded, blasted to 200 TV channels, all imparting supplementary education in all regional languages. Digital university, high quality e-content, so that students can actually access the education from the comfort of their, homes or let's say classrooms. They don't really have to travel too far to kind of get educated in terms of both primary education or skilling and reskilling initiatives. I'll now move on to international investment impact. I've been dealing with foreign investor for the last 20 years, and I can say that this is the right tone. The ease of doing business initiative 2.0 are going to open the floodgate of investments into India. I'm dealing with a lot of inquiries, both from Southeast Asia and of course the West. And I can tell you the mood is clearly towards investing in India and vice versa. So no longer we are just attracting investment in India, we are also acting as a regional hub. Then there are, discussions as to tax incentive for manufacturing company, IFSCs. For foreign universities, rules have been relaxed. And similarly, I would say there were specific rising sectors, the logistics, infrastructure, digital automation. This has been the spirit of the budget, but they were specifically mentioned, 6 new sectors were specifically mentioned, which we are anyways, taking initiatives: space, clean tech, green energy. We also read about the green bond. So all is adding up logically in giving a good story. This is the PLI scheme. I would rather skip this slide because I want to give more time for the deliberation. But this is just, again, in words of Sai Sudha, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I would say much more is happening. Agrochemical, government has announced their thinking. There are other sectors which, again, are going to get further traction when the government comes out with favorable policy. I have measured the impact of what happened when the government announced PLI for the automobile sector. And this is the story in all the PLI schemes. Impressive. Exports to India, I thought but Ambassador mentioned that there is a scheme, there is a book, and I'm very keen to kind of go through that book and rather skip this slide because that book will have more facts and figures for me to study and come back to you all with more detailed analysis. So in the bottom line, I would say these are my thoughts. The budget is well thought through, based on success in learning, and blueprint is based on real-time data and statistics. Government has really, the finance minister has admitted, there were certain areas which did not happen or performed as they were expected to. So this is a very honest admission. This is the accountability that any citizen expects from their elected representative. And this is what is happening right now at the helm of affairs. So basically, as a common man, as a professional, as a businessman, I think the overall perception that the budget is practical, realistic, and measurable. If anything can be measured, it can be trusted. And so is my, complete, trust goes in what has been stated because I can see it happening on the ground. So with this, I end my presentation and thank you very much for all your attention.
So, yes, if you can unmute yourself. Yes. Earl, you're back. Yeah. Sorry, I have to unmute you. Yes. Can you unmute yourself, Earl?
Yeah.
Yeah. Himanshu, look, you've really whetted our appetite for more, and I know you're going to start the panel now. If there was one thing that I've taken out of both your presentation and Sai's presentation is the confidence that you get for the future of India, where you've got young, active people with their hands right over what's going on. And will be asking the right questions, monitoring everything, the progress of this, and ultimately holding people to account. That's what progress is made on.